Hi, I'm Susan Blain, and welcome to the Dare to Be Vulnerable project. I like to say that this is a safe space for us to have conversations, courageous conversations around our mental health, and really break that silence and bust the stigma for once and for all, remove the shame that we feel around our struggles with mental health, and ultimately save lives by keeping the conversation going, by sharing our lived experiences around our mental health. It's the only way that we're going to affect change is to continue talking about it and to continue sharing stories from all walks of life. Diversity is so important because it's who we are. So mental health, here's the thing. There's two things. We all have a mental health, so let's get that straight. Mental health, sometimes that term or those two words makes people feel uncomfortable. But the truth is we all have a mental health. Just like we have a brain health or a gut health or a heart health, physical health, we all have a mental health. The question is, where are we on that scale? Good mental health, optimal mental health, or poor mental health? You can have a mental health diagnosis like I have and still have good mental health. You know, it doesn't discriminate. That's the second thing. Mental health does not discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, you're poor, young, old, your sexual orientation, your religious belief, your cultural background. It's a human thing. So we're creating these courageous conversations and sitting down with guests and talking about our mental health. And today I'm here with a friend, Jody Burton. So I'll tell you a little bit about Jody, just a little bit professionally about him. He's the CEO of a high-tech company called Stoneworks Technologies. He's been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. He's a dad, he's a husband, he's a son, he's a brother, and he lives with bipolar disorder. Please welcome Jody Burton.
Hi, Susan.
So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
We finally made it.
Yeah.
I always like to start these chats just so to give people that are watching kind of a sense of relatability.
Yeah.
You know, who do you think could best relate to your story, your mental health story?
Honestly, everybody.
Yeah.
So, you know, for myself, I think, as you alluded to earlier, mental health touches everybody, and it touches them in different ways. There's so many, and as you said, it doesn't discriminate against anyone. So I think it's a lot of folks. I certainly, you know, I resonate with everybody. I think I have the conversations, as you said.
You've been talking and sharing for quite some time.
Yeah.
So you have some experience in talking with people.
Indeed.
The reception that you get when you talk.
And it's been all walks of life. It's been fellow entrepreneurs, which has been amazing to share some stories with them and get a better insight and understanding as to what some of their challenges have been in life and how they've overcome them. And then it's just some everyday Joes or folks that I've never met before, or some people that I've had the fortune to meet for a first time, and you know, having open conversations like we're having today has, you know, kind of incubated some new talk tracks and some new ways of taking away from the stigma associated to mental health, but also to just I learn a lot from it. I learn a lot from how I cope with my day in, day out dealings of my mental health in meeting with folks, right?
Yeah.
And hearing
It's
their
part
stories.
of our healing too, right? For sure. When we share, I like to say there's something magical that happens.
Yeah.
You know, we go first. That's kind of our motto with the Dare to Be Vulnerable project. We go first. We're going first. And it gives other people permission.
Yeah.
Right? With your story, and I know that your diagnosis took some time.
Mm-hmm. You
know, that you weren't diagnosed till later in life. So when did you realize that you needed help? Or
it was quite some time ago. It was probably almost 10 years ago where I used the term, I said, my boat started taking on some water. My personal boat started taking on some water. And I had attributed a lot of it to change in life. I had gone through a divorce, a tough one at that. So I was trying to deal with that. Running a business, a fast-paced business and the stress associated to that. That was certainly very difficult for me. And I'd had a couple of bad injuries. I'd suffered some concussions. And that was probably that was kind of the Achilles heel to it all, was a sports injury that I had where I suffered a bad concussion and then stuff got pretty bad. Right? My coping mechanisms of how I dealt with bipolar my entire life, not knowing that I had bipolar, weren't working anymore. And that was crushing for me. It was crushing in a sense that I was struggling personally, and I couldn't really seem to get out of the hole that I was continuously falling into over a period of time. And it was a bit of a journey. I sat down. It's not to say that any of the professionals that I dealt with did anything wrong. I met with some great doctors. I met with psychologists, some clinical folks as to why was I feeling this way and why could I not kind of get my engine started again, or why was I taking on this water all of a sudden where I didn't historically. And a lot of it was treated as depression, which I guess I was in certain ways. Yeah. But a lot of it was attributed to just a chemical imbalance. I shouldn't say just a chemical imbalance, but it was chemical imbalance. And it took a little while. It took years to get to that point. And, outside of going through some of the trials and tribulations and tests as to kind of finding the right recipe to help me create a balance. Yes. There was the mental trauma associated to, going through that process as well. Yes. So, there was a lot of reflection during that time as to, for myself, I felt weak. I was defeated. I was very defeated. I'd never had feelings like that before. Had suicidal ideations. They were coming into my life on a regular basis. Yeah. And I felt like a loser. I really did. I felt as though I was kind of losing ground, and that I just wasn't doing a good job, and that I was kind of taking that old mentality of roll up your sleeves, toughen up, let's go,
push through. Yeah. Right. What was the turning point?
I ended up meeting with. There was a couple of turning points. It was a struggle. A lot of it was a struggle in two ways. My partner, my wife, was absolutely phenomenal through this process, but she didn't know either, right? She did everything she humanly could to try and help me through this process, but it got to a point where she just said, like, I'm out of tricks now. Like, I really don't know what to do to help you. I want to help you. I love you. It breaks my heart to see you like this because, when things are good, they're good. Yeah. And, being bipolar, I've been very fortunate with my bipolar that for the most part, it's kind of given me Superman powers. I get these manic states in which, I learned to harness over a period of my life where I could do, I jokingly use the term superhuman things. Yeah. Right? I was able to do things bigger and faster and stronger than some of my peers and my friends. But when I couldn't tap into that any longer, it was crushing for me. It was just the worst thing. It was almost like
losing an appendage.
Yeah, a superhero without a cape all of a sudden. Yeah. Right? So we ended up going through the process. My wife finally said, like, it's reached a point where things got so dark that she was worried about coming home one day and me not being there. And that definitely hit home, and I certainly went through a period where that was a big part of my life. I was, it was a daily affair at times, and I just couldn't get my engine started. And I finally agreed to go in and meet with the folks over at the Royal Ottawa, and that was tough.
Yeah.
I still remember that to this day. I remember every waking moment of it as I sat in there, and I just said, like, I was so embarrassed, and admittedly, it was like, I shouldn't be here, right?
It's hard to surrender, right?
It totally was.
Yeah.
It totally was.
That's so powerful at the same
it was
time.
absolutely amazing. It ended up being, it lifted such a great weight and burden off of me. I met with Dr. Baki. She was one of the specialists. Within minutes, he just said, like, we'll go through the entire process. But he said, man, oh man, you are bipolar times 10, right?
Yeah.
And we'd never gone down that path. We just thought that, I was depressed and I was dealing with life and, things were tough and I'd gone through some adverse scenarios and I was just having a tough time dealing with it.
So what a relief it must have felt like for somebody to say,
amazing.
This is what you have,
Yeah.
and we'll get through. We know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it created some light.
Yeah.
It created some light in a scenario where there wasn't much light.
Yeah.
So, outside of him creating a slightly different regimen as to some of the medicine that I was taking, that created a better balance for me.
Good.
And then just that mental weight
Yeah.
of kind of knowing what it was and saying, okay, well, I can tackle this.
There's hope.
Yeah,
Yay!
There's definitely hope. There's definitely hope. And, for me, it was, there was that jubilation. And then I did have some tough times with it too, because I said, oh, this isn't something that will ever go away. That was one thing that I remember feeling this elation and this great sense of, oh my goodness, he's taken so much weight off of me and giving me this diagnosis. And then I got into this, fight or flight. I want to win. I'm gonna beat this. And he said, you're never gonna beat this. It's always going to be a part of your life.
You're going to live with it.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to buddy up to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the long answer to how we got to this point today. And yeah.
I love that. I thank you so much for sharing that.
For
I
sure.
know a lot of people are going to be able to relate.
Yeah.
How about daily practices? Do you have any that that focus on your mental health? A toolbox?
I do. I think a lot of people, I would love to say that I'm a yogi and that I do meditation every day, and I don't.
Some days?
I'm actually I'm very big on deep breathing, in doing that and kind of getting my rhythm down. And so I do that every night before I go to bed.
Oh, nice.
To kind of slow my engine down a little bit. Physical activities for me are huge, right? Obviously, there's the vanity of, we all want to look good. And
the benefits.
Right.
Mentally and physically.
Yeah. For me, the mental benefits from exercising and working out on a daily basis are amazing. The days that I don't work out, I work out almost 7 days a week. And it's not, as I said, as much as the vanity is a portion of it, for me, it's, without that, I don't feel as though my ecosystems is
you need those endorphins.
Ready to tackle the world.
You need those endorphins, man.
Yeah.
We all need those endorphins.
Yeah.
And I know, because you and I have had many discussions, I've had you on a LinkedIn Live, and we've talked about here in Ottawa, because you've had your company and you have your team of employees, and you have been open and sharing your journey. It has affected your culture.
It has.
In a beautiful way.
It has indeed. Outside of, I call them my work family, right?
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate to have surrounded myself with a bunch of amazing people for a long time. And they've gone through this journey with me, right? A lot of them, sadly, really didn't know. The odd time I was really good at hiding it, right? Everybody kind of saw the facade of it and the smile, and I came in and I gave them my energy throughout the day, and then I would go home and sit in the fetal position, because some days were that tough, right? And it was difficult. It was even difficult when some of my teammates went to the extreme. They said, we felt we should have done more.
No.
right? We feel as though we let you down. And I said, oh, no, absolutely not, right? You guys helped me through this process. And, I've encouraged them to not only continue to help me and be an integral part of my life. And I certainly try to be that in theirs. But they've kind of taken control of doing it with other folks too.
I love
right?
that.
And having conversations around it. And there's not that, it's not uncomfortable. It's, one of their teammates, I think they say it with pride to a degree.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's become part of your culture, and that's what's happening with this project. And you're one of the leading companies in Ottawa who are having courageous conversations in the workplace. And there's a cultural shift happening, sort of a strong mental health culture.
Yeah.
And so I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
That you're doing it. You've done it for yourself, like that oxygen mask, right? We got to put that oxygen mask on ourselves first to be able to be there for others. And then you open that up and allow that and foster that within your organization. I love that. And I've always admired that in every conversation that we've had. And I trumpet you to others because we need more companies. This is the time in the world. This is the time after the pandemic. The world needs more healing. And the workplace, we spend 50% of the time.
Agreed.
We need to affect change there. So
Agreed.
I herald you at being a leader in doing this. If you had something to share for those that are watching that may be struggling right now, Jody, what advice would you give?
I've always there's hope.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there's hope. Don't give up. I encourage people to talk about it.
Yeah.
And try and take away. I try and create platforms in which people aren't embarrassed. I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of folks.
Shame.
There's a lot of shame associated to mental health and the challenges associated to, dealing with it on a day in, day out basis. And, we all deal with it in different ways.
Yeah.
So, my big thing is I just try and encourage people to say there are better days ahead, right? And there are ways to get there. And that to be open about it and to be open about their feelings. And there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about.
No. It's actually powerful. Vulnerability is a superpower, as Brene Brown says,
yeah,
right?
very much so.
And we're demonstrating that right now.
Totally.
You're demonstrating that all the time.
Totally. I'm not embarrassed about it. And there's really nothing to be embarrassed about. And I don't think anybody else should be either. But this is the good side of it, right? And there's definitely been some bad sides. My goal in life is to shorten up, if I could do one thing, is shorten up that process for people to find a better light, to find a better day. That's kind of my mantra in life every day is, I struggled for a long time. And part of that was my own personal struggle, my inability to cope, my inability to feel comfortable enough to reach out to people and ask for help. And I just want to shorten that for folks.
Yeah.
And I want to ensure that people understand that that it can get better. Yeah. Right? And that they can be comfortable. Right.
That's what we're doing right now.
That's why we're doing this, right?
That's exactly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, I hope you've heard something here today that inspires you. Something from our conversation from Jody's story. Definitely hope. There's always hope. Your story matters. Check out daretobevulnerable.com and the other stories that we're sharing. Maybe you have a story of your own to share. If you're watching this on social media, please leave us a comment. Share it with somebody else. Look for opportunities to be vulnerable in your life. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.